And there we are. Good evening, James Tweedy. How the devil are you? We are joined, of course, by James Tweedy from Sputnik, all round raconteur, Housewife's favourite, and of course the next album that, should we say, is going to be, should we say, his love life is going to be splashed all over the next album by Taylor Swift. James, good evening, mate. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Warren. Thanks for that introduction. And how are you?
I am absolutely fine. I would imagine that there's a few people who are panicking at the moment. We're going to get right into it, James, because obviously there are discussions at the moment ongoing between Witkoff and, of course, the Russians in Moscow. Your thoughts about the whole thing, because we haven't seen each other for a week. I personally think it's a complete and utter waste of time. And of course, Witkoff has gone without the sidekick and everything else. Let's get into this then. So Witkoff has gone along with Kushner. They've gone to meet, but there is one notable exception who has not been there, and this is this man, Marco Rubio. Has been left at home, or Little Damien, as I call him.
Well, in the past, when they've actually got business done, it's been because, it's just been Witkoff and one or two other minor people. And then Kushner is Trump's son-in-law and was his Middle East advisor. And now, Witkoff is doing that job. Basically, he's Trump's Middle East envoy, right? Russia is not in the Middle East, obviously, so they're there to get business done, I think. I mean, what's happening on the ground is that Ukraine is things are going badly for the Ukrainian army.
No, they've still got Pokrovsk. CNN has told us that Pokrovsk is in Ukrainian hands, right. James Tweedy, and Kupiansk.
Yes, okay, so there we go. After the Russians have said that they've captured that and Volchansk. So, you could view it as a cynical thing. They're trying to end the war before Ukraine loses so badly that the West can never again use it as a proxy to make trouble for Russia, or before it loses so badly that it's humiliating for NATO and possibly persuades some NATO members to leave because they're spending a lot of money on defense that they're spending up more than they want to on defense to be part of NATO, and they'd rather not, I mean, and what's the point if NATO can't defend you anyway, right? NATO can't actually stop the Russians from doing what they want. So there's that. But on the other hand, that although the 28-point plan contains a lot of things that the Russians have just dismissed, it also contains things which are serious and important, and it's about halfway there in a way. If you're, is the cup, is half of it, you can say half of it, you can be like an optimist or a pessimist. You can say that they're halfway there, that's good. Or you can say, well, half the things on the list are unacceptable to Russia, and then so you won't get a peace deal out of it. But no, okay, it's a negotiation.
So let me ask you then, James, how much do you think, because Rubio was called in at the behest of the Ukrainians, how much of the original 28-point plan that was leaked by the Ukrainians is still in effect, and how much has been changed by the Ukrainians, do you think? I mean, we know of at least 4 parts of that the Ukrainians are not going to agree to, and they seem to be fairly, shall we say, Russia have turned around and said that they're non-negotiable.
Yeah, okay. Well, what's happening to the Ukrainian government, though? That all seems to be falling apart as well. People are quitting because they've been named in, or fleeing the country because they've been named in this corruption scandal, which whatever that is, everyone knows that they were siphoning off money for years. So why now, right? Yes, exactly. So they're knocking out people and it's like a message to Zelensky.
It is. Yeah.
Maybe it is. You can't prove that, but it's like
James, I
the
read it exactly the same way, buddy.
Mm.
It,
So so they, Ukraine has a choice. I mean, it can make peace on terms which are acceptable to Russia, and that includes things which are really no skin off Ukraine's nose, like not joining NATO. Why do you want to join NATO? It doesn't do Ukraine any good. I mean, this war's got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of them killed, so that NATO can possibly base missiles on their territory, which would be the first target for nuclear weapons in a war, right? So why do they want to? No, they don't want to be members of NATO. It's the US wants them to be members of NATO to use it as a forward base, right? It's not that doesn't benefit Ukraine. Being a member of the EU, again, questionable value. What's that? If you have free movement, if you join the EU, you join the free movement zone. What are all the people of Ukraine going to do? Half of them have already gone.
Yeah, they're already in Europe.
They'll suddenly get the right to live in all those European countries in perpetuity, forever, for the rest of their lives, and their kids will get citizenship there, and they'll just settle in those countries because there's more work, right, and better paid work. So, it becomes you don't particularly want that either. I mean, that's not even on the table. But and then why do you want to? Again, like arguing about. I said this last week. Arguing about whether you have an army of 600,000 or 800,000. As soon as it's over, you've got to demobilize all the people who've been conscripted, called up from, reservists who were called up, and other people who were just conscripted and never been in the army before. You've got to demobilize them all, and then you're going to have an army of 100,000. And the way things are going, you're going to have 300 tanks. They're only going to have 300 tanks left, and things like that, and maybe no aircraft left. So, what's that? And then the idea of NATO troops in Ukraine, yes or no? Well, how many? How many are being offered exactly? What difference does it make? Are they going to stick around? Are they going to fight the Russian army in some future scenario and then have World War III? No, none of those things. Then there's only going to be, there'd only ever be like a few thousand of them from all the countries of NATO, and they wouldn't fight. And they're just there, supposedly, basically as human shields. They say, Russia won't do anything while they're there. Well, no, they're not going to be anywhere near where the border is, wherever the border ends up being. So it's all, what they're doing, they're just in denial. They don't, Zelensky knows that once it's over, he's out of power. He's going to have to go and live in another country, probably, and never go back with him and his family are going to have to leave. And there's all sorts of people around them who have got daggers at their backs saying, you can't surrender, or, if you do, we'll kill you.
Yes.
You can't make peace. I mean,
totally agree with that. Well, let's get into this then, James, because what we've got here, Pokrovsk is now a complete death trap, and Pokrovsk already, been taken over. At Minorab, we understand there are about 1,700 troops that are still left in there. They are starting to surrender in great numbers, James Tweedy. The footage is starting to come through to show that they're surrendering in great numbers. And of course, Zelensky would much rather that they just stayed there and got absolutely wiped out. But let's have a little look here. This is Russia officially holding all Pokrovsk. Russia claims to have captured the key city of Pokrovsk as Ukraine dismisses loud statements ahead of Witkov's talk.
Yeah, but there's the video of them in the city, in the city. So, that city does not look like, I don't know, Bakhmut or Artyomovsk, as they
No.
call it, or Ugledar, that were completely destroyed.
Yes.
There
I
was
think
not, the fighting hasn't been as fierce. I've seen other parts of the city where, you know, the buildings are all smashed up, gutted and stuff, you know.
Well, let's have a look at a couple of them then. Here's Pokrovsk clear up. This is footage from earlier at Pokrovsk.
Yeah. Roll garages there. Right.
You're right, it doesn't look as damaged.
Все, прошел пострел. Давай, заходим, заходим.
If there's anybody in these rooms, they're sure not coming out, James. The other sort of ones we have from Pokrovsk as well. Let's have a little look at this. This is Zelensky. Now, of course, the Ukrainians have been trying to say that this video doesn't exist, but it's quite clear that it does. What on earth are they doing, James? I mean, it's about as evident as you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, I mean, okay, there are ways to make things, but
Это центр Красноармейска. Российская армия его зачистила.
they have a certain look to them, you know. This would have to be a very sophisticated fake. It does look like real footage, real pictures. Yes. So there's the thing. So a week or two ago, it was clear that that the Ukrainians were losing the city.
Yes.
It wasn't completely surrounded, but the main roads in and out were cut off effectively.
Yeah.
And the Russians were in the city. They'd taken, I mean, a week or two ago, they'd taken half of it. So what, like, and they'd gone past it, in fact. The Mirnograd, that the Russians called Dmitrov, Mirnograd is only surrounded because the Russians had advanced north of Pokrovsk up the road.
Yes.
And cut it off.
Here we are.
So,
I mean, here's Pokrovsk, here's Mirnograd here, but the Russians have it completely shut off.
Yeah.
And as you can see there, the Russians have already entered that part of the city. So the pocket, I'm not surprised they're surrendering, James, because the pocket is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And we've shown on here how effective all the, shall we say, the arms have been, all the bombs have been that they're chucking in there. In fact, let's hear from a Pokrovsk survivor.
Получили одежду и сидели. Месяц сидели. Были инструкторами негры и британцы. Британцев было 3, и негров тоже 3. Они нас обучали, как захватывать дома. Был взят Покровский в доме. Нас было 3 человек. Когда мы находились в Покровске на позициях, мы знали, что мы окружены, и нам не окружены российскими солдатами, мы знали, что нам не прикидают пищу, и пришлось нам сдаться в плен. Нам не передавали здесь неделю. В Покровске много солдат раненых и убитых з Збройних сил України. Із Покровська убитих і ранених не вивозять, бо немає чим вивозити. Ранені погибають самі, бо їх ніхто не вивозить із поля бою. Коли нас взяли в плен, російські военнослужащие нас обращались хорошо. Угостили чаем и накормили. Солдатам Украины хочу пожелать, чтобы скорее вы сдались в плен.
Now, obviously, he could have been forced to make that, but we've also got a bit from Minorad here. We've only got a little bit of this, but we can show you this now, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. This is in Minorad, where they're all surrendering. And that is literally, they're being taken away by the Russians there in cars. They're not trying to make it out of the city. Anybody trying to make it out, Minorad is being absolutely blown to bits. So don't think for one moment that is them trying to make it. Yeah, I would too. You're absolutely right. And when it comes to, should we say, taking care of that, we seem to have lost James Tweedy for a minute. But as I say, when we get to this point where people are wanting to surrender and they're trying to give up and everything else, it is amazing that they're pushing over and over and over and over again. The other problem that we have, and we do have a real problem here, is they have pushed so hard and so much that we are now getting, let's have a look at what Zelensky was banging on about. Zelensky, this is apparently one of Zelensky's guys. James Tweedy's internet has gone down for the moment. No problem, James, when you come back. Very, very simply, we have a major problem in that, shall we say, Zelensky's advisors are saying this. Now, this is one of his advisors, so it's not to be taken lightly or with a pinch of salt.
Тобто він розуміє нерозуміння людей навколо того, що відбувається. І сьогодні, коли я побачив, я його і вчора я його побачив, сьогодні його побачив, я подумав, що він від нас, від всіх втомився. Я думаю, що нам президент про це не скаже, але я подумав, що Зеленський вирішив послати нас всіх нахер. І я не жартую зараз. От, я думаю, що і тих, хто на нього нападає, і тих, хто його не може захистити. А ті, хто його не може захистити, це ми з вами. Нехай вам це неприємно чути, але ви не можете його захистити, і я не можу його захистити, на превеликий жаль. Ви пишете, що це не вперше. Це не вперше. І я дуже сподіваюся, що він не плюне на нас і все ж таки продовжить робити те, що він робить. Я сьогодні після цього, от після цих відчуттів, коли я дивився на ці фотографії, я після цього подзвонив другу і сказав: дивись, мій прогноз нічим не обоснований, без будь-якого аналізу, він наступний. До 15 грудня ми підпишемо зупинку вогню, до 15 грудня. Буде, значить, потрохи вакханалія, буде велика кількість новин, якісь двіжі, якісь там істерики політичні і все інше. В Новий рік Зеленський вийде зі зверненням до народу і скаже: я на Новий рік вам сказав, що я йду в президенти, а на цей Новий рік я вам кажу, що я йду у відставку. Ми підписали зупинення вогню. Далі перемовини замість мене буде вести спікер парламенту. І він піде, і він не буде приймати участь в виборах сам, і він не буде створювати новий політичний проект. Слуги народу, як ви розумієте, вони йому нахер, значить, не здались в тому вигляді, в якому є. От дивіться, я ж ще раз кажу, у мене немає ніяких основань це говорити. У мене немає ніяких чуток. Мені президент не говорить такі речі. От, там, я не спілкуюсь ні з ким там, з його там, медійників. Тобто я не знаю всю цю ситуацію. Але я дивлюсь на нього і розумію, що він більше не хоче. І питання тут, він більше не хоче не тому, що він втомився від війни. Питання в тому, що він втомився нам всім пояснювати нахуя нам це?
My heart bleeds for him. But it would seem from one of Zelensky's advisors now that it could just be a load of nonsense. But we thought we'd play you the video so you could have a little look at that. And of course, we'll play you something from Zelensky from 2024. This should never be forgotten when it comes to Zelensky.
So happy.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
Great to see you. Nice to see you.
Great, Elio, as you know.
As you can see, JP Morgan, and of course, many other banks. So you know who was bankrolling Ukraine, and you know exactly what was going to be given up by Ukraine. So anybody, if you've got any pity for Zelensky, get rid of it straight away, because Zelensky was all about Zelensky and the people around him. Certainly not anybody, should we say, that has a real problem. Now, where we have a problem, I was saying this just now, and we do have a major problem now, and it really is a problem, because Putin is now beginning to talk like this.
Overall, we can see that the combined group of forces, they continue to apply more and more pressure along the entire front line. We have established control over some large settlements that have great significance for future operations to liberate the entire territory, including the territory that is still controlled by the enemy.
So that when the entire territory that is still controlled by the enemy. Now, lots of people have taken that to be that he's going to keep going and take the whole of Ukraine if they don't come to a settlement. Now, whether he does or not, I'll leave that up to you to decide. But it very much sounds like he's going to do just that. And you wouldn't be surprised if he did. Would you blame him? Not sure you would, of course, because of everything that is going on. And here where we have a problem, because, of course, once again, somebody asked me to play this video again, so I'm going to do exactly that. This is the video of NATO expansion. Now, have a little look at this. Now, there is not one there who is not either in the Partnership for Peace or in an individual partnership or a NATO member. And of course, quite a few of them have gone dark blue ever since. So it should tell you something. And as always, it is going to be an existential threat. Now, Ukraine have turned around and said they are not ready to give up on being part of NATO. Tells you everything you need to know when people talk about this. Andy Edge.
Yeah, did you like my comment today about when they take Odessa to take Moldova?
Yes, absolutely. One of those. I think you're slowly turning into Marco Rubio, Andy.
I'm insulted.
Yes, one of those. I would be too. I think being called Marco Rubio would probably be one of the worst things on the planet.
The thing is, it would be really good to tie up loose ends, because you've got your Transanita at the top of Moldova, and it's all together then.
Yeah, I'm with you. I understand where you're going with this. I think it's probably not. You know, I don't think it's something.
Not this year.
I don't think he's. No, not this year. I don't think it's something he's going to do. James, we were just discussing. Welcome back, buddy. We were just discussing the problems we have that Putin is beginning to talk about taking the entirety of Ukraine. Is that the only way if they don't make a deal? I still don't think he's going to do it, but a lot of people with these latest shall we say, speech, it sort of left it very ambiguous and very open to interpretation. I don't think that will happen, but what about you? You'll have to turn your mic on, James.
What did he actually say then?
We'll play it for you again. Hang on 2 seconds. Let me see if I can get that video back up for you. Hopefully we can. We're going to have to reload that, James. So basically, he turned around and he said that they may need to take a lot more of Ukraine, and of course that's triggered a lot of people into thinking.
Is about this stuff about buffer zones, isn't it?
Yes.
And he's talking about Kursk and Sumy, where they're already fighting in the border region. And then he said Chernigov, which is the next one to the west, which I think goes up to the Dnieper River on the northern border of Ukraine. But that's,
well, let's play that video for you. Let's play that video for you, James.
Overall, we can see that the combined group of forces, they continue to apply more and more pressure along the entire front line. We have established control over some large settlements that have great significance for future operations to liberate the entire territory, including the territory that is still controlled by the enemy.
Now, is he just talking about the Donbass? Is he talking about Novorossiya, or is he talking about the entirety of Ukraine?
Well, I think it's ambiguous,
yes.
But based on that, but he's talked recently about achieving the goals of the special military operation, as he puts it.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be taking all of Donetsk and Lugansk. Lugansk is mostly done. And Zaporozhye and Kherson as well. But Zaporozhye and Kherson regions, oblasts, include land on the western side of the Dnieper River.
They do.
So that means crossing the river and taking that, or else winning it in a peace settlement, in a trade-off for something else, I suppose, right?
Yes.
But if they can do that, I mean, does that mean they have a plan to do that? If they can do that, that's something fairly spectacular. And at that point, Ukraine is going to be in big trouble, and it's they'll have to. If the Russians are on the other side of the river, the western side of the river, then it's it's big. It's curtains for them. They've got to make peace quick before they march into Odessa or something like that, right?
Yep.
As and I think Andrew was talking about. So there's that. So so they'll need to do that. But then they'll also fight tooth and nail to stop that from happening, because they'll say, well, no, Russia's got a bridgehead, permanent bridgehead on the west side of the river. Yeah, and we can never defend against them now. As long as they're there, we can never defend against them. They could just march on Odessa next week, even if they don't take Odessa now. They'll just march into Odessa in 6 months' time or a year. That's what they'll say. So they'll fight tooth and nail, and they'll insist that it can't be ceded and so on at peace talks. So it's possible that Russia would have to take it by force.
Yeah, you're right. Let's have a little look at this then. The places, of course, Ukrainians trying to say, of course, that there are normal people there. But of course, we're talking about factories as well that do 3D printing for drones being blown up. We had that idiot who raises money for NATO, Richard Woodall, who was, of course, on the TV going, look at this post office, we're posting hundreds of drones out to the front line, and the Russians then suddenly spanked it. It is amazing, isn't it? The lack of, how can I put it? This whole thing seems to be a Banana Republic run thing. There doesn't seem to, there seems to be a complete lack of cohesion, a complete lack of knowing that there will be Russian spies absolutely everywhere. I mean, this is, it's almost like amateur hour, isn't it?
Well, yeah. There are two. I mean, there are two things, two contradictory things at work there. They want to have propaganda. They want to make propaganda, but to make propaganda and actually keep things secret, that you want to keep secret is kind of difficult. You've got to do your propaganda in a special way. You've got to take pictures of all your tanks driving around a field which is on the next to the Polish border or something like that. You can't you can't actually go to the real site. It's like when they were showing the production line for the Flamingo missile, which is nobody knows if it's real or not, right? But people were able to, or they thought they were able to, identify the building. They recognized the interior of the building, and they said, "Oh, it's this building here." You see, because some people have seen it, or they can find photos of it. So, you can't. Yeah, there's a limit to what you can do propaganda-wise. But that's the other thing that's going on now, isn't it? Like attacking these tankers in the Black Sea, just off the coast of Turkey, not off the coast of Russia, off the coast of Turkey.
We were speaking about that yesterday, James, because that for me that's a huge own goal. Because what happens there is they go, right, well, you're attacking that shipping now. Okay, they were going to Russia to pick up oil, and they've hit another tanker, of course, which wasn't carrying oil at all. The problem that we have, and they're registered to the Africans, but that's by the by. The problem that we have, as they're hitting commercial shipping, that just means that Putin becomes even more convinced that the Ukrainians can't have a seaport, and that means Odessa being in Russian hands.
Well, yeah, all right. I mean, it justifies Russia in retaliating in kind. Some countries that have been, I mean, Turkey is, it likes to say it's neutral, but it's been quite sympathetic to Ukraine, and it's sold them arms. So, it's embarrassing for them that it happened in their waters, or near that, maybe not in their coastal waters, but near their coast.
Yeah.
And it could have caused like a big oil spill off their coast, honestly, right? If it had gone like the Ukrainians wanted it to.
I did wonder where Greta was.
And then it becomes harder and harder for the countries that really are supporting Ukraine to justify that, because what's Ukraine acting like a bunch of terrorists or something,
Yes.
So, and pirates and all this sort of thing. So it becomes harder and harder to justify, unless one has to ask, is the US in favor of this? Does the US want long term to cut off Russian oil and gas supplies to Europe? Is that what they want in the long term? Is that why this is happening? Or is it just Ukraine trying to score a propaganda victory in the middle of the peace talks to try and persuade the US or...
well, that's the other thing, James. Every time there's a peace talk, the Ukrainians pull this stroke, or the British or the Americans.
They always do it, yeah. Every time there's like some kind of conference about giving them arms, they try and, they launch a load more drones at Russia, and they try and, we blew something up, right?
Yeah.
All these things. And they're just trying to say, well, we can win. We can, look, we've scored a little victory. You can tell people it's a victory. The media in the West will report it as a victory for Ukraine and all this sort of thing. And they will, it's got a political significance. It doesn't have any real, military or economic significance, but it has political significance, and it's trying to keep the West and the NATO countries supporting, get them to continue their support for Ukraine, right? Keep on supporting Ukraine. in the war, but that's not necessarily going to work. It's possible that the US has already made its mind up. It wants this, it wants this turned off, at least frozen or whatever, put on hold until such time they can actually deal with it, because they can't. It's out of their control now.
Okay. Do you give this story any weight? Zelensky received a direct order to leave this week. We played a video from supposedly one of Zelensky's advisors saying that Zelensky wants to quit and he's had enough. The head of the Kiev regime, Zelensky, will resign this week. This was stated in his Telegram channel by Verkhovna Rada deputy Artem Dimitruk, citing sources. Do you give any weight
in Dimitruk's channel, not Zelensky's channel? Okay.
Yes. Do you give any weight to this? Well?
If he resigns, I will. I mean, he's under pressure. It's hard to tell whether this whole corruption thing, which is being organized by an anti-corruption agency that was set up by the US,
Americans.
Really. Yeah. Whether that is aimed at getting rid of him because he's the problem, or
aimed
whether
at
it's just
getting
about
him into line. I think more likely aimed at getting him into line.
Yeah, but the Russians have already, they said they made the point that there was supposed to be an election early last year, and there wasn't. Yes. And so Zelensky is not the legitimate president anymore, right?
Yeah.
So they made that point, and they were possibly wise to do so. But it means that he can't sign a peace treaty. Someone else has to sign it. Either who can be legitimized as an acting head of state, or is actually an elected president. So there has to be an election. And it's possible that you could say the Russians were wise to do that, because any government that any government that follows Zelensky's could just say, well, Zelensky wasn't the legitimate president, because you can say that.
Yeah,
so
I think you're right there.
If anything, we're tearing it up.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at this then while we're at it, because this is the Ukraine territory claimed on the map, the Russian-controlled territory, and a rough idea of the front line. Now, everybody is saying that the Russians, these people in the green areas, are mainly Russian-speaking people. And I'm one of those who believes that they're going to take the 8 Oblast plus, of course, Odessa. But it makes sense, doesn't it? All these people want to be part of Russia.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it makes a certain amount of sense in terms of Russian politics, internal Russian politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's, the Russians were happy in 2014. They would have been happy if the Minsk Accords had been implemented, and that Russian would be one of the official languages, and the church could, the government wouldn't suppress the Russian Orthodox Church there, and all these sort of things, and everyone's, and they would stop killing people in the Donbass and so forth, and then allow them the autonomy that was part of that deal. But even without that, after 1991. From 1992 onwards, basically, when the countries became independent of each other, and after 2004, the Orange Revolution, Russia did not actually move to take those territories, and they would have been happy if the rights of the people had been observed, had been honored, had been, So, sorry, I'm having a terrible day today, and I'm just trying to collect my thoughts. So, if their rights had been guaranteed, everything would have been fine. Now, there is a point that you have to look at it from both points of view. Ukraine can't continue the war; it's losing. But can Russia, is Russia prepared to to keep fighting for another year or two? Maybe it wouldn't take that long, but possibly another year or two to get all the way to Odessa. And then force and then probably take a lot of other territory that would force Ukraine to cede Odessa, force the USA and all the NATO countries to recognize that as Russian territory, bearing in mind that they still possibly want to let NATO out, let the NATO save face. There is an argument in favor of that, and that argument is that there are crazy people in some of the capitals who would, especially Washington DC, who would demand that the USA go directly into war with Russia if it looked like they had definitely lost.
As if they haven't got enough wars on their plates already.
Well, exactly, but it's going to be it would be a huge humiliation for the USA. They were talking about how they were going to back Ukraine and how they were going to destroy the Russian. They had already destroyed the Russian economy with sanctions, blah blah blah, and then the Russians march into Odessa. Russian army marches into Odessa. And then that means that the US isn't worth anything.
Yeah, exactly that. So we've got America, and America just quietly admitted can't crush Russia's economy. Well done, America. You finally woke up. Like we weren't telling you that over and over and over again. So let's get into some of this then, because obviously this was our headline today. We put you in the hat. You look very George Galloway-ish there, James Tweedy. So very, very simply, when we talk about von der Leyen, she's now literally been blown out because the World Bank have turned around and said it's a very, very bad idea to be taking hold of these funds, and of course, in phone calls left, right, and centre, they want the 140 billion, and of course, von der Leyen isn't very happy about the fact that she's been blown out here. But the Belgians are starting to fight back, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But let's deal with von der Leyen first. I mean, there is more and more, shall we say, people turning around and saying, no, this can't go on, this can't stand. We cannot take the frozen Russian assets. Your thoughts on that, James?
Well, to paraphrase Spider-Man's uncle, with no power comes no responsibility, because the EU is not a country. It's an organization or a treaty between countries. And the European Commission that Ursula von der Leyen is the president of, is not the government.
No. She's a European Union president. Commission is Kaja Kallas.
No, she's also a commissioner, but she's the foreign, the European Union president is the one who chairs the European Council, the European Council, which is the meetings of all the heads of government or ministers of a certain kind or something. It's very confusing. Anyway, she's not the leader of any country, right?
No,
she doesn't have the power to do anything really.
No.
So, but she's taking credit for all this stuff, and so she can say whatever she wants because it won't come to pass, and there's no, and there won't be any comeback on her anyway because it wouldn't be her decision. If it does happen, it wouldn't be her decision. It would be the decisions of the governments of the EU states. But yeah, I mean, like Nicholas Parsons saying, here come the Belgians. The Belgians are, they have, it's a small country, but it's it's nice and wealthy, and one of the things it's got going for it is it's where Euroclear is, right? And Euroclear, I mean, also it's where the EU and NATO headquarters are, so they make a lot of they get a lot of trickle down money from that. But Euroclear, great, it's a clearinghouse, but the clearinghouse people won't use the clearing house. It's a bank that acts as an intermediary for payments, settle payments for trades between different countries, right? Special kind of bank. And it's a great business. I mean, I don't know what they take in commission. It might be 0.1% of each transaction or less.
A lot of money.
But they would still make a fortune.
Yes.
Right? Just based on the fact that they've got $200 billion worth of Russian assets, of Russian money in there. It's not assets, it's just money. Right?
Well, let's get into that then, James, because I'm literally, so the European Central Bank has refused to guarantee a proposed 140 billion reparations loan for Ukraine. According to them, ECB officials said the European Commission's plans fall outside the bank's mandate. That's another rejection or another blow to Brussels, which have been trying to raise a massive loan backed by frozen Russian assets at Belgium's Euroclear. Now, EU governments also pushed back on Belgium's demand for blank check guarantee to shield Brussels from potential lawsuits by Russia. Now, the Belgian Prime Minister, De Wever, I hope I pronounced that right, wants EU governments to provide financial guarantees exceeding 140 billion, payable within days and lasting longer than the EU sanctions on Russia. Now, 4 EU diplomats have come out and said that such demands would expose their countries to enormous long-term financial risk. If the guarantees are limitless, what are we actually signing up for? The refusal from EU capitals now threatens to derail the negotiations for that ahead of key December summit. Without progress, Brussels may try to issue more EU debt to plug Ukraine's budget shortfall, an idea once again widely disliked because it sticks EU taxpayers with the bill. Washington has also quietly undercut the EU plan. US officials told the EU over the summer that they support returning Russian assets once the conflict ends. There are people in the US administration who want to deal with Russia, so the asset seizure scheme doesn't suit them. And yet, despite this, Ursula von der Leyen kept pushing this. But now Belgium has openly opposed it. And of course, the US may be backing the Brussels resistance. Donald Trump's peace plan had a proposed US managed 100 billion investment package for Ukraine, with the remaining funds going into a separate US-Russia account, effectively blocking any EU reparations loan. And after talks between Ukraine and America, rumors suggest that the clause might be dropped. In any realistic settlement in Moscow, unfreezing Russian assets will be a central issue, won't it, James?
Yes, of course. And they're not going to say, oh, yeah, why don't you just take half of it and put it in a fund that you control that's going to be for supposed joint business ventures, but obviously it's going to benefit the US. No. And then the other half is to rebuild Ukraine. No. And they've already, there is a similar value of assets of Western countries, companies from Western countries in Russia, which is, are frozen or whatever, or seized, or have been expropriated for good already. And so Russia, for whatever the West takes from Russia, Russia can take from the West in return, you see.
I mean, but doesn't the European Union, European Union violate its mandate if it does that?
I don't know, but they could be sued. Why wouldn't they be sued? They have courts, right? In Belgium, like Euroclear could be sued. Euroclear doesn't want to do it because it's probably, like I say, it's probably an incredibly lucrative business.
Yes.
And it probably, the tax they pay probably is a major contributor to the
probably worth more than Ukraine's actual GDP,
Yeah, right? They're probably making up a large part of the budget out of the tax that one company pays. And if they can do it to one country, they can do it to any country or any company from any country, right? So who's going to do business with them? They'll just be an alternative. And I don't really know about this sort of stuff, but
okay.
Let me assume that there either is an alternative or one could be set up quickly.
Let me ask you a question then, James. Let me ask you a question then, James.
Yeah.
Are the EU going, hey, Belgium, take Russian assets, give it to Ukraine, it'd be cool and totally legal. Belgium are going, okay then, but you need to help me if I get in trouble. EU turn around and go, sorry, bro, you don't drag us into it. You're on your own here. Belgium turn around and say, it's your idea and you said it's safe and legal. So why are you not helping just in case? And then the EU just go back screaming incoherently about Russian propaganda, don't they?
Yeah, look, they were asking for that 140 billion euros, basically, in case Russia wants its money back, you see?
Yeah.
So, in other words, whatever the EU thinks it's taking, it has to give them back so that they can pay Russia. So, how does that, how does that benefit the European Union or Ukraine or anybody? No, they've got to pay for it. So, the question of who is going to, what is going to happen to Ukraine after the war? It going? They will want to rebuild. Who's going to pay for it? All this sort of thing. I don't know. I think that's all up in smoke. What was the point of that deal between the USA and Ukraine a few months ago about the mineral wealth, right? Wasn't that how they were supposed to be paying for it or something? And all the rebuilding work is going to be done by US companies, and they're going to make all the money.
Well, while we're at it, then let's have a listen to this silly old move.
That last week was extraordinary, and if what we read is correct, and the Americans are indeed negotiating with Russia for access to their market, to the Russian market, to the exclusion of Europe, we would be facing the sum of all fear in a way, because a bad deal, possibly a bad deal on one side, and something very worrying on the other. So wouldn't be at this point perhaps useful to open direct negotiation with Moscow and send there a kind of a European Witkoff? Thank you.
Well, everybody has been very clear, especially the Russians, that they have no interest in peace right now. So again, I mean, we need to put them in the position where they need to negotiate. Right now, they are not in that position because they think that they can outlast.
James, she's made some incredibly moronic statements over the last week, including Russia and the 19 countries and everything else. This woman is, given what is just happened, and we'll get into it in a second, are we going to see this possibility? Because of course, what's happened in Belgium. I mean, are we possible? Is it possible we could see Kaya Callis in an orange jumpsuit? You'll need to turn your mic on, buddy.
Well, no, I mean, quite obviously, basically, but she was saying something about she's basically saying quite childish things, because there was this question of reducing the size of the Ukrainian army as part of a peace deal, or limiting the size of the Ukrainian army. And she turned around and sort of said, no, you've got to reduce the size of your army to Russia, But who is going to make them? Who is going to, all this stuff about negotiating from a position of strength, blah, blah, blah. Who is going to do that? How are they going to get into a position of strength? How are they going to turn around the actual military situation on the ground so that Ukraine is winning? They're not. I don't see that they have a way to do that. They supplied a lot of arms in 2022 and 2023, and that stuff is a lot. Most of that stuff is destroyed, or the heavy, the most important parts of it. And the Ukrainian army is not in better shape. It's got, like that man that you showed in the video.
Yes.
Who's,
they look like hobos,
I don't know,
don't they? Let's face it. They don't
look
look like
he looks like he's in his 50s. I mean, his voice might sound like that because he's cold and he's just he's had a hard time and he's just surrendered. But he's got grey hairs in his beard. That man is in his 50s or something. Maybe he's even 60. And their army is not in a great state, and it's not going to improve. It's not not going to be able to recover and actually build up their army properly again while the war is going on, and they're just going to, and they're losing ground, and they, you know, the Russians are going to be outside the city of Zaporozhye in a few months.
Yes,
things like that. So she's just saying stuff because it sounds good. She's in denial about it, and she's just saying stuff because she wants to say, no, Russia is losing. Russia must reduce the size of its army. Russia must do this and that, and so forth. And that's it. It's you know, it's not. Those things are not true, and saying them is not going to help. Obviously, she doesn't want peace, but with no power comes no responsibility, because, like UVDL, she's a member of the European Commission, which is not the government of a real country.
Yes. So let's get into this then, because I think it is something that we need to talk about. The Belgian police. Now, I'm wondering if this is something to do. They've turned up, obviously, at the EU offices, and they've arrested. Of course, is this Belgium striking back because of Euroclear? Because they've turned up at the EU offices and they've made several arrests. The Belgian police are conducting raids at the European Union's diplomatic service, which is Kaja Kallas's offices are in there. According to Euractiv, raids are also taking place at the College of Europe in Bruges and in private homes as an investigation into alleged misuse of EU funds. Who knew? It is reported the police seized documents and detained 3 people for interrogation on suspicion of corruption, criminal conflict of interest, and fraud in procurement. They are former EU Foreign Policy Chief and European Commission Vice President Federica Mogherini has been detained and from the elite College of Europe, where the EU diplomats are trained. The European Public Prosecutor's Office carried out these raids on Tuesday, and of course they're looking into. Also detained is the EU Diplomatic Service Secretary General Stefano Sanio. The case concerns possible violations in how the EU's External Action Service financed a 9-month training program for future European diplomats in 2021-2022. Investigators are examining suspected fraud in public contracts, corruption, conflicts of interest, and breaches of professional security. Who knew? Including whether the College of Europe or its representatives were tipped off in advance about selection criteria for the tender. Your thoughts on this, James?
Well, the EU gets a lot of money.
It does.
From its members, and it spends a lot of money. And you know, again, it's not a government, and it spends things pretty much as it wants. And you know, there's always sort of things you can say, you know, you can point to and say, well, you know, that was just a big folly, wasn't it? You know, yeah, they spent a lot of money and they didn't get anything out of it. They spend money on weird things like building playgrounds in parks in the countries that are members, and putting a plaque up saying the EU built this, you know, so be grateful. This is what the EU gives you, a playground, you know, like your own government, like the local council couldn't do that, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, and old Moggers, I mean, you know, as I used to call Federica Mogherini.
Good old Moggers.
She was someone who kind of made that role famous, you know, at the EU that Kaja Kallas is now in.
Yes.
And she's